Everyone. I want to
Kind of deserve each other.
I want to dedicate our lesson today. I want to dedicate our lesson today in memory of Yola Gerst, who passed away Shabbat. Her funeral was yesterday. She was a longtime member of the community, very generous. Also a member of our community. And today at 4 o'clock, we're going to have a Shiva service in her memory in the Beit Midrash. You're all welcome to come. She was like a really very special woman that I'm really fortunate that I got to know. And I also said, my mother's here online. She really reminded me of my grandmother. It's a very, strong woman, very, very decisive, very, with this dry sense of humor, but very funny also. And I love Judaism in our community. So may her memory be for a blessing. Yehi zichra baruch. I want to talk today. I want to talk about Rashi that I saw on this article about him. They called him the Prince of Commentators in Judaism. Okay, so what does it mean, commentary? Right? When we say today a commentator, you think about someone in in an NBA game, right, or a football game. They're like the commentators, right? Why do I need a commentator? Because there's a game going on. And it's so fast and so many things are happening, I might not understand what's going on. I need to know who threw the ball now, okay, who did a good defense, who got it. And as I hear the commentary, I am enlightened. I understand. I have a much better understanding of what's going on, okay, on the ground. And I know that, from going to a game where you don't know much and you're sitting in the crowd and it's like your head spinning as to sitting back home and you're listening to everything and you see the statistics on the TV and everything is very clear. So it's a much better experience sitting in the stadium, right? And in the arena, but it's not the same as your experience as understanding of what's happening, of course. And that's basically what the commentators on the Bible or the Talmud are doing. They're dealing with texts that are not always easy, that sometimes contradict each other, that sometimes have issues of theological questions also, questions of belief, of good and wrong. Something's written in a verse. It's like, that doesn't make sense. We want to go back to the commentators a lot of times. They help us understand these difficult texts and words, etc. And in Judaism, it's even more difficult and more complicated. There's just the issue of like the way the scripture is written, but sometimes it's also the question of the centuries that have passed by, right? Language has changed, measurements of weight has changed, currency has changed, language has changed. So we have to have the commentators to basically bring us into the whole picture, into the whole historic scene of what's going on. So if you're a good commentator, you know how to do that. And there are many, many different ways of commentating on the scripture. There's the more traditional commentators. There's the more pshat, which is like the more actual meaning, like the simple meaning of things. The more, and there's the more midrashic commentators, which use analogies and metaphors and scripture that was written before them to describe currently what the text is. So it's very complex. So even among the commentaries, there are different genres, etc. And there are hundreds, there are thousands of commentators on the Bible, on the Talmud, etc. But amongst all of them, when you talk about commentary on the Bible or the Talmud, you have to say the word Rashi. Okay, Rashi is actually on the page of each Bible and each Talmud. Okay, he is really by far the most comprehensive commentator. And no, he did not just do it a few years ago with computers and that era where everything is available online and you can easily do it. No, he did this in an era where no computers and just with his brain, his one brain that he has this vast knowledge. So you could just imagine what a great person he was. And I really want to dive into his character today from this article. In the vast sea of Jewish scholarships, few names shine as brightly or as enduringly as that of Rashi. Revered across centuries and communities, Rashi, an acronym for Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, okay, that's the Rashi, has profoundly shaped how Jews understand their sacred text. His commentaries on the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, and the Babylonian Talmud remain foundational in both academic study and traditional learning. Beyond his written work, Rashi's legacy is enriched by the scholarly lives of his daughters and grandsons who extended his influence through the generations. And we're also going to talk a little bit about his daughters, which were some kind of like an early feminist of the time. Okay, but first we have to really understand, how did Jews even get to France and Germany? There were always Jews in Europe, in Italy, for example. Why were they in Italy?
Come up with a Spartan from the
Was
North
relatively
Africa
close.
for a
No,
while.
why were Jews in Italy? What's the capital of Italy?
Rome.
Rome. Why would Jews be in Rome? Exile. The Second Temple. Who did that?
The Romans.
The Romans. They brought. Anyone here been to Rome, to the Colosseum?
Yep,
Yeah.
You've seen our menorah, all the treasures of the. Okay, that was carried. Who carried all those stuff? The Jews, right? And they settled in Rome, in Italy. So Jews were always in Rome, in Italy, in Spain as well, in Greece, right? So Jews have always been in parts of Europe, but never in the other parts, which are colder. Jews kept away from these areas, and they were like no man's land. These places were like with savages, with they didn't know what's there. They didn't really want to go there.
Comment for you. I found out in my ancestry that I'm 48% Middle Eastern. I have a cousin in Mexico City whose last name is Ramon, because everybody that came from Europe was given the name Ramon because of Rome. And that's my second cousin.
That's
None of
it.
my real cousins that I grew up thinking were my cousins, because my father, was 6 months old, came from the Ukraine. I have no idea how he got there. He was a foundling, probably, but
Okay.
he didn't know either. And none of my first cousins that I thought were my first cousins were on my ancestry. Only Jose Atri Ramon, my second cousin in Mexico City.
Okay. Okay, nice. Okay, good.
But what you were saying,
So,
the Germanic states were just barbarians up until the late 19th century.
well, not all of them, but around the year 900 to 1000 CE, Jewish communities began to take root in what would become France and Germany, regions that would later be known collectively in Jewish traditions as Ashkenaz. Okay, Ashkenaz is German and French Jews in certain areas, and not before that. Okay, so it only started then. The earliest Jewish presence in these areas can be tracked back to the Roman Empire, especially in the southern France, Provence, and along the Rhine River. Jews lived in cities like Arles, Narbonne, Mainz as early as the 4th and 5th centuries. However, during the chaos of the early Middle Ages, many communities declined or vanished. But by the 9th and 10th centuries, during the Carolingian dynasty, Jewish life was revitalized. Charlemagne, okay, that great king that we all know of, and his successors granted certain protections and privileges to Jews, encouraging commerce and urban development. Jewish merchants, sometimes referred to as Radonites, played a vital role in long distance trade between the Christian Europe, the Islamic world, and Asia. They traded goods like spices, silk, and precious metals, which made their presence valuable to rulers and local economies. Okay, so this is kind of a common knowledge about how Jews made it, right? How they became bankers and lent money and were merchants because they, they couldn't really own land and have certain professions, okay, but they still got their way around.
So this
And-
was before the Rothschilds.
Because,
came.
because,
This is before the Rothschild.
Oh,
Wait.
this is 1,000 years before
Yeah,
them.
but see, the Jews could
Yeah.
read and write.
Yeah, and they could read and write, and they were
Yeah.
able
They
to.
did do math, simple math.
Yeah, so they were very loyal, very valuable to the local kingdoms. And as Jews moved northward into Germany's Rhineland cities, such as Mainz, Worms, and Speyer, okay, they established the foundations of the Ashkenazi tradition. These cities became centers of Jewish scholarship and religious life. By around 1000 CE, Jewish communities in France, especially in northern towns like Troyes and the German Rhineland, were thriving. They built synagogues, established schools, and developed a rich tradition of Talmud study, which would produce legendary figures like our Rashi of Troy. These communities lived under Christian rule, and while they were often economically useful and sometimes protected by kings or bishops, they also lived in a precarious legal and social status as servants of the royal chamber, subject to both tolerance and persecution depending on the political climate. Let's not forget that a lot of the crusades, okay, happened in these places as, the different kings were suffering economically, and they went on, their crusades to Jerusalem to get it's freed from the Muslims. They always went through some Jewish villages, and it's like, oh, let's kill some Jews on the way to Israel, okay, and get back at the Jews for whatever they
a
thought
lot
was
were taken
happening.
on their way.
Hmm?
I thought a lot were taken back from the Crusades as they came through Germany with a lot of.
No, I think it was more on the way,
On the
but
way.
maybe it was both ways. Okay, they and this period laid the groundwork for century of Ashkenazi Jewish life, learning, and culture. Okay, let's look at the 2-minute video about Rashi, and then go into his life.
The Jews of Mainz have been attacked! The Jews of Mainz have been attacked! Burned to the ground! Mobs with swords kill them!
Welcome to the Jews and History. Rashi, a light after the Dark Ages. Set in the 11th century, Rashi is about a man, an extraordinary medieval French scholar who lived in the years just before the Crusades' reign of terror. Rashi became, and still is, not just the most reproduced and widely studied commentary on the Bible, but one of the strongest forces and role models in Jewish and world history.
How dare you
Widely studied commentary on
Wanted to stop here. You see here, this is a very early Talmud page before printing. On the right side, you see the Talmud text, and on the left, you already see Rashi's commentary. It was so powerful and so good that they put his commentary already on the manuscripts as they were copying it. And you remember how a Talmud page looks today with so many other commentators?
Yeah.
His was right there from the beginning because it was so
the
good.
Bible, but one of the strongest forces and role models in Jewish and world history.
How dare you remind this man of his past weaknesses in my Beis Din or anywhere? So, Bishop,
He refuses to see you, Duke Godfrey. He refuses to debate.
he's smarter than you made him out to be. Even though they be kings, even though they have power, even though they might think themselves superior, they are still human. And no human is perfect. No human can escape sin. Mistakes. I will make you the first order of business. I will kill you and everything around you! To Jerusalem!
Voice of Leonard Nimoy, right? So this is like a trailer for a 1 hour movie. I couldn't bring the whole movie here, but you're welcome to watch it back home. Okay, so early life and background. Rashi was born in the year 1040 CE in Troy, a city in the Champagne region of northern France. Troy was part of a region where Jewish life, while precarious due to social political conditions of medieval Europe, nonetheless flourished culturally and intellectually. His full name was Shlomo ben Yitzchak, and he descended from a respected line of scholars, possibly tracing back to King David, according to some traditions. His father Yitzchak is said to have been a humble wine merchant. There's a beautiful legend that when Yitzchak was offered a rare gem to use in idol worship by local non-Jews, he threw it into the sea rather than participate in paganism. As a reward for his act of piety, it is said that God granted him a son, Rashi, who would illuminate the Jewish world. Okay? And this is the education and scholarly training. From a young age. Rashi showed exceptional aptitude for learning. He studied in the local Beit Midrash, house of study, in Troy, but soon ventured further afield to deepen his knowledge. Around the age of 17, he traveled to the great yeshivot, Jewish academies of Mainz, Worms, and the Rhineland region of Germany, which were centers of Ashkenazi Jewish scholarship. Okay, so this is Germany. Okay, this is France, the north of France is where he was, and Worms, okay, is a big yeshiva, was a very big yeshiva here. There's also a famous rabbi, Rabbi Gershom Meor Agola. That was the rabbi who said he can't marry more than a woman. He was also one of the great rabbis of Rashi. I mean, a little bit before him. He influenced him as well. There he studied under such prominent rabbis such as Rav Yaakov ben Yakar and Rav Yitzchak ben Eliezer Halevi. These teachers were part of the intellectual lineage stemming from Rabbeinu Gershom, and that's the one I just mentioned, known as the Light of Exile, who helped systematize Talmudic study for the Jews of Europe. Rashi returned to Troy around the year 1065, where he began to teach and write, eventually becoming the spiritual leader of the local Jewish community. Okay, so this is the Rhine River, okay, and this is, here is Mainz, and wait, this is way too small. Okay, but this is like the French area, and this is like the German area, and you know, a lot of Jews would live in that area, as we just explained. His professional life and community role. Despite his towering intellect and religious leadership, Rashi did not hold a formal rabbinic post with a salary, as such positions were not common in his time. Okay, rabbinic positions started only at the 14th centuries. That's just a side note. Okay, there were never rabbis that would just be paid just to be rabbis. Not to undercut my position here. Okay, but rabbis were always had a job. Okay, and on the side, you know, they would go. Do you remember last week we talked about the Rambam, how he was a doctor, how he was a merchant? He worked very hard, and in his spare time, he would study and give halacha and rule and all that. Okay, only in the 14th century, okay, did communities start realizing we want to have the rabbi 24/7 just for us because we have questions. We want him to teach. We want him to rule. We wanted him to see if this is kosher or not, etc. So they started taking, actually, not the great scholars would never do that, but they took their students, okay? We're like, you know, kind of like, okay students, but they knew what they were doing and they could always refer to the higher authorities, but maybe they were more friendly, maybe they were like better, like social workers, there's like, they know how to, because the scholars didn't want to deal with the masses. They wanted to study, they wanted to write their books, etc., just like an academy. Okay. So that's when communities started hiring rabbis, and also as more and more communities grew. Okay, so if Rashi would live in Troy, but there would be a smaller Jewish community somewhere else, they might have enough money to hire a rabbi, but they couldn't get Rashi to come over, and they couldn't go every time they had a question for Rashi. They wanted someone for Shabbat, for things like that. So they would say, "Oh, Rashi, could you send us a student of yours?" Okay, I'm just giving an example because it was like only in the 14th century did rabbinic positions start. And at the first, it was also more specific, like someone would be like a shochet, okay, like he would know how to do the rights, slaughter, or a mohel to do the and then yeah, or a mohel, circumcision, etc. And then eventually it became more like a rabbinic profession. Yeah.
The Pharisees were kind of spiritually the precursors of the rabbis, yes?
Yeah.
What happened for that interval from, the Pharisee period to the 1400s?
Well, that's all these other lessons that I was telling.
Right.
They wrote their predecessors wrote the Talmud.
But
the Mishnah, and the Mishnah then is the Talmud. Okay, and then the Geonic period. These are all the Pharisees.
But the Pharisees were basically full-time proto-rabbis, yes?
No, they had
No?
jobs as well.
Oh,
They had positions.
oh.
Okay,
thought-
every there's a beautiful poster that I once got, and I have to find it for you, put out by the Masorti conservative movement in Israel, and it was like an ad, against the fact that all the ultra Orthodox, they're just studying Torah all day and they're not being productive to the community. And it's not just the rabbis, it's all the students and everyone. And they had a poster was like all the names of the other rabbis, like Rabbi Akiva and and Rabbi Yudah and the profession of each of these. One was, a peddler, one was a carpenter, one, so they had all these positions.
I thought that, I didn't realize it started that early. I thought it really wasn't even up to modernity. A lot of rabbis still had professions, businesses beside being a rabbi.
Well, eventually, it started here and eventually grew up. Okay, so what did Rashi do? Instead, he supported himself through viticulture, the cultivation of grapes for wine. He was involved in the wine trade, which was a common profession for Jews in medieval France, and is said to have had intimate knowledge of agricultural life, something that occasionally finds its way into his commentaries. So every time there's commentary about something that has to do with wine, grapes, or anything, Rashi is an expert, and we see that in his literature as well. There's Rashi wine, by the way, which is supposed to be very good.
Well, the Catholic monks also did that. France was kind of noted for.
Yeah, Champagne, that's the area. In Troy, he served as a rabbinic judge, dayan, teacher, and posek, a legal decisor, offering halachic Jewish legal rulings. His home became an informal yeshiva where students from near and far came to learn. Okay. Wait. Yeah. Rashi's commentary on the Bible, the Tanakh, the landmark work. Rashi's commentary on the Bible, especially the Torah, is perhaps the most well-known and widely studied Jewish commentary ever written. His work covers almost the entire Tanakh, the Torah, 5 books of Moses, Nevi'im, prophets, and Ketuvim writings. His Torah commentary was likely begun around 1070 and completed before his death in 1105. It combines the pshat means the plain, contextual meaning of the text, with midrashic, which is the more homiletic or allegorical interpretations drawn from the Talmud and the midrashic literature. That's what I said before. There are 2 layers of commentary, and Rashi mastered both of them.
Why don't we see more Rashi elucidation within Chumashim today. I mean, we have a lot of modern.
Every Chumash has Rashi in it, and even in the conservative movement, they have a lot. They bring a lot of him, but they blend it already in. But that's a good question. I always love it. I always like to have a Chumash with Rashi next to me. Unique features. Rashi's style is terse, elegant, and lucid, seeking to explain the biblical text with clarity and reverence. His genius lay in his ability to anticipate the reader's questions. He often addresses issues of grammar, syntax, word choice, and narrative flow. He was also a master synthesizer, weaving together traditional teachings with his own insights. For instance, in explaining why the Torah begins with a story of creation and not the commandments, Rashi famously cites a midrash to say that it establishes God's sovereignty over the world, a theological response to nations who might challenge the Israelites' right to the land of Israel. It's a very, very famous Rashi. We'll actually learn it in a moment, and everyone quotes Rashi in saying that. Rashi's Bible commentary has been printed in virtually every edition of the Hebrew Bible since the invention of printing press. It is often the first commentary studied by children and remains a centerpiece of advanced Torah learning. His interpretations have shaped Jewish and even Christian understandings of the biblical text for nearly a millennium. Okay? Let's go into some of that text now and give this out. Okay, please take one and give it out. Let's look at some of the.
I sent you the poster on your WhatsApp.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's great. Oh, you found the post. Oh, yeah, I love that.
Was that from your mom?
Yeah, that's my mom. Yeah, she knows that poster as well. Oh, I think she probably has it hanging somewhere. So you see, this is like a phone book. Okay. You see, it's like a phone book. And it has like, sort of like Hailers, Abba Ben Zimna, Daniel, Hanan, distilleries, Rav Chisda, Rav Papa, Rashi, okay, porters, Rav Sheshet, needle makers, Rabbi Joshua, scribes, Rabbi Mary, physicians, Samuel, Maimonides, potters, Rabbi Nehemiah. Okay, so it's like a phone book. And so it's like an ad to say rabbis always had professions, and these professions are mentioned with the rabbis. The Talmud with the Pharisees, it mentions these rabbis had professions. That's how they made their living, not from Torah. And actually, there are a few sayings about rabbis should be forbidden from taking money for teaching Torah. Okay, so there's some commentators. I mean, other rabbis worked that out.
Yeah.
Okay, so now rabbis,
It.
hey, yeah. Don't eliminate my salary, please. Right, why?
You're cooking.
Right, yeah, I get paid for my cooking. Yeah, you could say that. Huh? I'm sorry.
When did it get to be that it was sort of like a rich man could buy a scholar for his daughter, and then the scholar wouldn't work and the daughter would work, or the father-in-law would pay him.
That's later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really much later on. That's part of the culture that Larry was referring to. Okay, so let's look on page 1 and study some of Rashi. Okay, so the first verse of the Bible is, in the beginning, God created, right? Yep. God created the world. So Rashi comments, this verse says nothing but explains the order of creation. And now he quotes a midrash from the Talmud. Rabbi Yitzchak said, the Torah should have started from this month shall be for you, which is the first commandment given to Israel. Why then does it begin with creation? Okay, so do you understand Rashi's question? He's like, who cares about how the world was created? Who cares that it was created in 6 days? That's no relevance to us Jews. The Torah is for us, the Jews. We should have started with the Exodus from Egypt when the Jewish people was established. Rashi knew how to ask very good questions, right? If you think about it, it's very nice to hear these stories about how the world was created, Adam and Eve and and temptation and throwing them away from the Garden of Eden. But who cares? That's stories for like the rest of the world. That's not relevant for the Jewish people. Okay? So he says the reason this is done is to declare the power of his works to his people, so that if the nations of the world say to Israel, "You are thieves, for you have taken the land of the 7 nations," they will say to them, "All the earth belongs to the Holy One, blessed be He. He created it and gave it to whom He pleased." Okay, so this is fascinating. Rashi is aware that one day, okay, not talking politics, not talking, like current events, okay, but there was always contestants for the land of Israel. Everyone wanted to be in that area. And they would say to the people of Israel, "You came here, the seven nations of the Canaanites, okay, and the Hittites and all those were here, okay, and you Jews came." So the answer is the Bible says God created the world. God created the entire world, and God decides who to give what piece of land to which person. And God decided to give it to Abraham, who's the founder of the Jewish nation, and it belongs to the Jewish nation. And that's it. End of the story. You don't have to argue. So in this way, he explains why the Bible starts with, "In the beginning, God created the world." So it belongs to God. Okay, nice and concise answer. Okay, and why is it classic? This opening sets the tone for all of Rashi's commentary, blending literal meaning with moral, national, and theological lessons. It addresses why the Torah, a book of law, begins with a narrative and links it to the spiritual justification for Jewish sovereignty. Okay, so this is also important to understand Rashi. Rashi is not talking to us the pshat, the literal meaning, because the literal meaning we know. Okay, this is the story of the creation, and it tells us, we don't have to be genius to understand what the Bible is telling us in Genesis 1:1, right? So he builds another layer on our understanding sometimes in this special way of his to make a point. And what is the point? The point in this case is clear that the land belongs to God, and He gave it to the people of Israel. Okay. Let's see another nice.
So it means like if God gave to Israel, and then He took from Israel.
Yeah. God says very clearly. The Bible says very clearly. We just read it last week. If we don't behave in the proper way that God expects us to behave, He's going to take it away from us, and He did that. Right? Jews were exiled. It's not ours forever. It's ours only if we behave in God's ways.
There's a Jewish story, I don't know where this started, where when the Jews weren't going to accept the Torah, so God holds the mountain over people and say, "You sure?"
Yeah. So the second one I wanted to show is number 3, okay, which is in Genesis 27:22, where it says the voice is the voice of Jacob. Okay, do you remember that story? Okay, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. You remember that story?
Mm-hmm. Hair, yeah.
With the hair that Jacob dressed up as Esau when he came to get the blessing. Okay, so Rashi comments, the voice is the voice of Jacob, speaking politely, "Please sit up." While the hands are hairy like Esau's, the voice of Jacob, no one is as soft-spoken and prayerful as he is. When the voice of Jacob is heard in synagogues and study halls, the hands of Esau cannot dominate. Okay, so here again, he comes in a more metaphorical, allegorical way, saying the way he interprets it is that when it's not the literal voice of Jacob that was talking to Isaac, it's more like the way he was talking to. And when Jews speak, when Jews pray in synagogues and they come and study in study halls, when they congregate together, okay, the hands of Esau's cannot dominate. Okay, sort of like it's like to encourage Jews to come and be part of the Jewish community and pray and study Torah, because that's really our power against, our enemies. And why is it classic? This verse becomes a symbol for the spiritual versus physical power of the Jewish people. Rashi's deeper commentary is cited often in sermons, especially in times of Jewish struggle, emphasizing the power of prayer and Torah study. Okay. Let's see if there's anything. Okay. Okay.
No, there's a.
Yeah, right. That's the one you were mentioning. Number 5. Okay. Exodus 19:17. And they stood at the foot of the mountain. Okay. What does it mean that they stood at the foot of the mountain to receive the Torah? Rashi's comment, a rabbi said, God held the mountain over them and like a barrel and said, if you accept the Torah, good, but if not, here will be your burial. Okay, that's why they were at the foot of the mountain, like right there. So God sort of like forced the Torah on them. And why is it classic? Rashi includes a midrash from the Talmud, which portrays Mount Sinai as being held over the Israelites, introducing the idea of a coerced acceptance of Torah. This puzzling image has generated centuries of theological debate. If they were forced to accept the Torah, okay, where's free will and many others, we're not going to go into the whole debate, but it brings in that question of the relationship of Israel to the Torah. Okay. Okay, another famous Rashi is on Numbers 22, and the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, right? How could a donkey speak? How could that happen? So Rashi's comment, this was a miracle to rebuke the prophet Balaam through an animal, for this man lost his mind, and God wanted to show him that his gift of speech was nothing special. Okay, so the prophet thought he's like controlling and ruling everything, and he's a magician and he's a special person. So God opened the donkey's mouth. Okay, so he knows I'm God. I'm God. I'm the one that decides who opens their mouth, who could speak, who not. Here, I can even have the donkey speak. And this is classic. This is an example of Rashi's wit and humility. He frames the miracle not just as a spectacle, but as a moral lesson. Speech is a divine gift. It should not be used arrogantly. Okay, nice, right? Okay, let's do one more. Deuteronomy, and Moses died. Okay, the end of Deuteronomy, it says that Moses died. Okay, and Rashi's comment is it possible that Moses wrote and he died? Rather, Moses wrote until this point and Joshua wrote from here on. Others say Moses wrote it in tears, or God dictated and Moses wrote it in tears. Very interesting, right? Because we know that Moses received the Torah on Mount Sinai. He received the entire Torah. He even received the part where he dies. How could that be? Okay, so some people say, well, he only wrote until this verse, and the last 8 verses from there were written by Joshua. That presents a big problem, okay, because we kind of like thought Moses was the one that wrote the whole Torah given to him by God. So others say, no, Moses wrote it, but it wasn't easy to write about his own death. He wrote it in tears, or God dictated it, and he wrote it in tears.
The Rashi comment.
Why is that classic? This comment deals with the theological challenge of how Moses could write about his own death. Rashi brings multiple midrashic opinions, demonstrating his ability to hold tension in interpretation and a deep reverence for traditions. Okay, so the themes in Rashi's biblical commentary: midrashic integration. Rashi often uses midrash not to obscure the text, but to resolve textual or theological difficulties. Grammatical precision. He carefully analyzes unusual words, suffixes, or grammatical forms, clarify meaning. Ethical emphasis. Many comments highlight values like kindness, humility, and faith. And educational sensibility. Rashi explains things as if teaching a beginner, but with insights that even advanced scholars appreciate. And that's really one of Rashi's brilliance, that he relates to all ages, right? He's really very, very good.
Did he comment at all on God's not letting Moses go into Israel?
Yes, he does. Okay, Rashi's commentary on the Talmud. Now we move to another huge work that Rashi did, which is that huge volumes of the Talmud and his commentary on the entire Talmud, which is probably even bigger operation than the Bible, because there's more text to comment on. So Rashi's commentary in the Talmud scope and method, even more monumental than his biblical work, was Rashi's commentary on the Babylonian Talmud, which covers almost the entire 63 tractates of this massive and complex body of legal, ethical, and narrative discussions. Without his explanations, the Talmud would be almost incomprehensible to most students. Rashi's commentary on the Talmud is usually printed on the inner margin of the page with Tosafot, commentaries written by his descendants and others, on the outer margin. We saw that when we studied the Talmud. He focused on explaining the meaning of the text line by line, translating difficult Aramaic phrases into Hebrew, offering definitions and clarifying logical steps. His ability to illuminate the flow of the Gemara's, the Talmud's argument, and to demystify obscure references was unprecedented. Impact: Rashi's Talmud commentary became so central that no standard edition of the Talmud is printed without it. It is the first resource consulted by virtually every Talmud student and has been a gateway to rabbinic learning for nearly 1,000 years. His work preserved the oral tradition and made it accessible to the Jewish people in exile. So that's a very big one. Other major works of Rashi, although his primary fame rests on his biblical and Talmudic commentaries, Rashi also wrote Responsa, which shoot legal answers to questions posed by communities or individuals, many of which were preserved by his students. Glosses on Midrashim, here on the work from the rabbis, stories on the Bibles and allegorical commentary on the Bibles. That's the Midrashim. He occasionally commented on Midrash Rabbah and other rabbinic texts. And grammatical notes. Rashi demonstrates keen awareness of Hebrew grammar and used it to explain nuances in the text, though he was less systematic than later grammarians like Ibn Ezra. We'll talk about him later on. Okay, some more interesting things about Rashi. Rashi's daughters, learned women in a patriarchal age. Rashi had no sons. They had 3 daughters, Yocheved, Miriam, and Rachel. According to both legend and some historical hints, these women were highly educated, especially in Torah and Talmud, something extremely rare for women at the time. All men knew how to read and write in Judaism, which was very rare because all the peasants and no one else did, except, for nobility. But women did not learn that even in Judaism, but Rashi daughters did. Though direct writings from them have not survived, several traditions suggest that Rashi taught his daughters Talmud, and they may have copied his manuscripts or helped in preserving them. Some even say they wore tefillin, phylacteries, although this is disputed by scholars. What is well documented, however, is that Rashi's daughter married scholars who carried his legacy. Yocheved married Meir ben Shmuel and their children Rashbam, Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir, Rabbeinu Tam, Rabbi Yaakov ben Meir, and Rivam became some of the greatest Tosafist commentators who expanded and debated Rashi's interpretations. Rashi's daughter Miriam was married to Judah ben Natan, who completed Rashi's commentary on Tractate Makot after his death. Thus, Rashi's daughter were the intellectual matriarchs of a dynasty that shaped Ashkenazic rabbinic learning for generation. And in honor of them, here's a short movie, 2-minute movie.
In an age of illiteracy, and in one of the truly remarkable parentheses in the history of education, Rashi taught his daughters to read and write both Hebrew and French. With no sons, and in order to meet the demands of his contrast, he shared with them the complex language of the Talmud, the intricacy of her thought, the beauty of her logic.
Of course the employer can keep the worker's clothes. The law is clear. If a worker hauling vessels breaks one of those vessels, the worker is responsible. It's clear.
What's clear is that the clothes the man left behind that morning were all he had. He shouldn't be held responsible.
But the law says he is responsible.
The law, but what about his dignity?
Read, Yocheved.
Rabba bar bar Hanan tovru lehanhu. Some porters negligently broke vessels of wine belonging to Rabba, the son of Rav Huna. He seized their garments. The workers complained to the rabbi. Return them their garments, the rabbi ordered.
He also says, pay them their wages.
But Papa, who should be paying whom?
Well, daughters, for a change you're both right. The law is the law, Yocheved, but there's another side to the law.
Papa?
Yes?
What if you had sons?
If I had sons, Miriam, you would have had brothers.
But Papa, if you had sons, would you have taught Torah to me and Yocheved?
I don't know, Miriam. I really don't know. Why is that so important?
It's not, I suppose.
Here, read. Proverbs chapter 2, verse 20.
Lema'an telech b'derech tovim, so that you may walk in the ways of good men.
In the ways of good men means to sometimes look beyond the letter of the law.
But by definition, the law is ethical and moral, right, Papa?
Yes, but not always. Didn't Papa just say we should sometimes look beyond the law?
Yocheved, Miriam, your Torah is as sweet to me as any son's Torah could ever be.
Okay, there's also a movie, Rashi Daughters. Ima, was that the one that Professor Mayer Gruber did? We have a friend. You can bring back the lights. I think they had a movie that was done about the daughters. Like this is part of the whole movie, and it's really nice. And the person that advised was a very good friend of ours, Professor Mayer Gruber, who's a Bible professor at Ben Gurion University in the south of Israel. Okay, so Rashi, the prince of commentators in Judaism. Let's summarize this. Or actually, we said all this. Let's talk about something else. Rashi script. Okay, Larry was asking before about that. Have you ever?
Wait, I'm sorry, I was kicked out. Do you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do.
There's a wonderful book by Maggie Anton. I think it's about 3 volumes. It's called Rashi's Daughters. It's fiction, but it's based on a lot of research. I highly recommend it. It's very readable. Maggie Anton, Anton, Rashi's Daughters.
Oh, nice. Oh, please put that in.
I wouldn't be surprised if the movie might be based on her book.
Oh, nice.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Gruber was involved somehow.
Maybe, but Gruber wrote about Rashi's writing and scripts.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you for that. I knew there was something that. Okay, Rashi script. Okay, the Rashi script. Have you seen this Rashi script? The special, right? You see the regular alphabet, and then you see on the left side of it the way, like the Aleph and the Rashi script, the way it looks, the Aleph, the Bet, and the Bet, Gimel, right? You see it's different. Right? You could all see that?
But he didn't write it himself.
Okay, so the Rashi script or Sephardic script is a typeface for the Hebrew alphabet based on the 15th century Sephardic semi-cursive handwriting. It is named for the rabbinic commentator Rashi, whose works are customarily printed in the typeface. The Rashi himself died several hundred years before the script came into use. It was taken as a model by early Hebrew typographers such as Abraham Garton, the Sonsino family, and Daniel Bumberg in their editions of commented texts, such as the Mikraot Gdolot, which is on the Bible, and the Talmud, in which Rashi's commentator prominently figure. Okay, so why is this interesting? Because it's easier to put text. It's much more condensed. If you write the full alphabet, so you can put a lot more text. It's like when we have, how do you say that when you write in English, like a script? Cursive. Okay, so this is like the Hebrew cursive. You can put a lot more text inside. So and it's like very small print. It's harder to see, but if you know the flow of it, it goes very quickly and became very popular. And they used it on Rashi's commentary, and that's why they started calling it a Rashi script, although Rashi is not the one that invented it.
Is that easier than writing the traditional
Hebrew? Yeah, it's much easier. It's faster, and it saves a lot of room. You could put like a lot more text.
Is that the same
Inside.
Hebrew as modern day Hebrew?
Yeah, but it's different font. Okay.
Rashi's commentaries were unequivocally accepted by everybody.
Everyone, no one disputed it. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is the Tosafot and the rabbis after Rashi. After Rashi died at 1105, whose clear and concise Talmud commentary became essential for Jewish learning, a new wave of scholars emerged who further developed Talmudic analysis. Chief among them were the Tosafists, along with the major commentators like Ramban, Nachmanides, that we talked about last week with the Rambam, Maimonides, and Rosh, Rabbi Asher ben Yechiel. These thinkers deepened and diversified Jewish study in the centuries that followed. Who are the Tosafot? The Tosafot, which in Hebrew means additions, were composed mainly in France and Germany between the 12th and 14th centuries by Rashi's students and descendants, especially his grandsons, Rabbeinu Tam and Rashbam. Their method was different from Rashi's. While Rashi explained the simple, direct meaning, the Tosafists engaged in dialectical reasoning, raising contradictions between Talmudic passages, analyzing legal implications, and challenging earlier interpretations, including Rashi's. Their commentary is found on nearly every page of the printed Talmud, opposite Rashi's, forming the backbone of Ashkenazic Talmud study. Okay, so and I said this also when we studied about Talmud, the Talmud is a huge complex of books written by many, many rabbis. Therefore, there has to be contradictions there. Okay, most commentators like Rashi just analyze it. They don't try to solve the differences and the contradictions. The Tosafists were not happy with that. They said, "Oh no, we want to make the whole Talmud like in the same tone, so there would be no contradictions." Okay, so they did that, and it's a huge operation that they took upon themselves, and they worked on it. And every page of the Talmud tries to reconcile the differences with another page of Talmud. It's a fascinating way to learn as well. Other major commentators after Rashi were Ramban, Nachmanides, who lived at the age at 1194 to 1270. A Spanish scholar, Ramban combined deep Talmudic knowledge with philosophy, mysticism, and a strong commitment to Jewish law. His Talmud commentaries are analytical and also respond to the legal conclusions of earlier scholars like Rashi and the Tosafos. He often bridged Ashkenazi and Sephardi traditions. And the Rosh, Rabbi Asher ben Yechiel, 1250 to 1327, born in Germany, but settled in Spain. Rosh brought the methods of the Tosafos to the Sephardic world. His legal writings, especially his halachic digest called Piskei Rosh, had a major influence on later law codes, including the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so the Rosh is a very, very important major rabbi, born in Germany, but he took all these traditions of Rashi and the Tosafos and Rabbi, he took all these traditions to Spain. Okay, he had to exile there, and he really helped build Spanish Jewry into its greatness until they had to exile from there because of the Spanish Inquisition. But for the hundreds of years that he was there, and his sons and his descendants created a magnificent array of Jewish books and commentary. Okay, so that was 1 hour about things that would usually take more than a lifetime. Okay, but that's I felt limited, but I also felt we really should give a good introduction to who these fascinating figures were, especially Rashi, a real beacon in his life. So next time, try to find in a kosher store Rashi wine, okay, and drink in his honor, or come and open a Bible book and study Rashi with him. There are a lot of books that help you study Rashi. Right, the commentator. Yeah.
So did the Sephardic tradition not have commentators that we know it?
They did, but they're not. The more famous one came in later. Okay, and that's a very interesting question. When I talk about the Shulchan Aruch, I'll talk about the difference between the Sephardi commentators and the Ashkenazi commentators. The Ashkenazi commentators kind of like leave things open and for debate, and they love debating more and more. Sometimes never come into a conclusion, and the Sephardi are more shorter, they're more concise, they want to come to the conclusion, and what do we got to do here? Not just talk and talk and talk.
The Guide for the Perplexed, Maimonides' book, is that anywhere to be read?
Yeah, it's even translated into English.
There?
Yeah.
I have both of my mind.
Adela, you had a question?
Yes, in the chat, I asked, how can we watch both those movies on our own?
I will try to get you links to them, but do on YouTube. They're on YouTube, some of them.
Okay, do you have the names, or just search for any movie?
Rashi's daughter, send me an email. I'll try to find it for you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Cool. I was interested too. They look great.
Yes, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I just want to share.
No, this is what I looked this up.
Yeah.
Just on Russia's daughter.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So I love a lot one of saying of Rashi, which it says, like I say the way how I understood. If majority says yes and minority says no, doesn't mean that majority is right.
Right. You gotta always bring all the opinions.
Or minorities.
Correct. We always preserve all the opinions in Judaism. That's a very big part of Judaism. Yes. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, a question on what you just said. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just a question.
Even though the minority may be right and the majority's wrong, wasn't there a story about a oven, and they said we have to go by the majority because it'll create too much havoc?
Well, sometimes, yeah, you usually go by the majority, but you always preserve the opinion of the minority.
Just because you're the only one doesn't mean you're wrong.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, O.J. Simpson.
Any other question?
What did you say the Rashi's definition of Tosafos is?
You'll have to go back to the recording, okay? It's going to be in there. Okay, thank you, everyone.
I have another question, Rabbi. You know, I went on your Facebook looking for the recordings, but I couldn't find them. I saw a lot of other nice things, but I don't know where.
YouTube channel of Congregation Near to Me.
Oh, it's YouTube. Okay, I went to your Facebook. Okay.
All the lessons are on the YouTube channel. They're all